Hi guys, this is the next part of What If Gohan Never Stopped Training. I hope you enjoy it. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe as it helps me a lot and to ensure you never miss another exciting story. Powering up, Piccolo and Gohan took to the sky, carefully scanning the area for any life. A flight that normally would have taken them an hour stretched into 6. Neither wanted Mayboy made aware of their presence just yet. More than once Gohan and Piccolo had to hide, waiting for one of the planet's citizens to pass by. While waiting in a small cave, they had a chance to observe one of the possessed Namekians. His physical appearance had not been overtly altered, you had to look closely to see it. His dark eyes reflected nothing, no light, no spark of personality, just nothing. They noted the almost mechanical movements of the Namekian, the fluid grace so prevalent in the species absent. Gohan couldn't help but send Piccolo the image of a marionette, held captive by his strings. Xiaosu stared into Baba's crystal ball, a frown marring his childlike feature. Why are there so many Nameks flying around Tien? Tien shook his head. It did not make much sense to him either. Frieza would send out constant patrols. Vegeta said softly. All eyes were suddenly focused on the prince. It was a way of showing us his power, his complete control over everything around him. Even planets that had already been purged, ones that we had already slaughtered the inhabitants, he would send out those ridiculous patrols. Vegeta's hands were fisted at his sides, his back ramrod straight. Mayboy is merely copying what he saw as a means of showing power, of playing with his subjects. Why you mean he's just treating them like toys? Videl asked, horrified. While Piccolo and Gohan had slowly made their way across the planet, the Z warriors had retrieved the last of their ranks. Master Roshi, 18, Marin, and Videl had joined the vigil around Baba's ball. Vegeta nodded, not choosing to speak about it anymore. That's just sick, Yamcha exclaimed, staring at the macabre scene. Once they were able to move again, Piccolo slowed their pace, feeling the need to be even more cautious. They were close, maybe a mile or so out from their target. Reaching the edge of a valley just as darkness started to fall, the warriors received their first look at Mayboy. Below them was a small village. Piccolo's face tightened in anger as he watched Mori, the Grand Elder, reduced to serving the man sitting on a large chair. Though it was hard to judge Mayboy's size accurately from their distance and his position, he seemed to be about Gohan's height. His bulky form was dressed in the traditional armor of Frieza's soldiers. His limbs conformed to that of most humanoids with legs and arms. Unlike the last tyrant to plague the Nameks, he had no tail. His skin was a pale yellow, almost leaning towards orange. Mayboy's head was the strangest thing about him. It was large, almost too big for his body and triangular, much like the Triceratops of Earth. His mouth sat low on his face, in the point of the triangle. Traveling up his face, he had a single slit, which was presumably his version of a nose, and like Tien, 3 eyes. Nail needs to calm down. Piccolo nodded, trying to calm his absorbed personality. Ever since seeing the Elder in that position, Nail's presence had become increasingly violent in his need to protect his people. Finally gaining control over him, Piccolo turned his attention to the sky. It's getting dark. I noticed. Apparently New Namek actually has a day and night. Do we know the duration? Piccolo searched his memories, seeing if Dende had mentioned anything useful. Coming up empty-handed, they considered how best to handle the situation. They were faced with about 24 Nameks, each one possessed by the monster below. I wonder if he can tell when someone under his power is attacked. Gohan mused, thinking how convenient it would be to knock out the innocent villagers out during the night. Then they would be out of the way and safe during the real fight. It's too risky. If he is aware, we will be fighting in the dark. Piccolo's mental voice was grim. Gohan and Piccolo slowly and carefully retreated to a deep cave for the night. Floating together, they picked through and sorted each other's thoughts, trying to come up with the best course of action. You know, we could always take a page out of my father's book and just wing it. Gohan offered lightly. Cute kid, real cute. However, Piccolo had to admit that the idea had merit. They had no way of knowing what Mayboy's third wish entailed. Nor were they aware of how complete his control was over the Namekian people. Winging it may be their only real option. We attack at dawn? Gohan asked, even though he could see what Piccolo wanted to do. He found talking with his sensei soothing, calming his nerves. Dawn. What are they doing? Chi-Chi asked. Gohan and Piccolo were in a cave, waiting. Shivering, she noticed that they looked just as they had this morning, floating in the lotus position, eyes closed. Had that really only been this morning? It felt like years ago. They will wait for morning. Master Roshi said calmly, his ever-present sunglass reflecting the ball's images. Attacking a knight would be too dangerous. Morning. When we were on the original Namek it felt like one long, never-ending day. Krillin commented, remembering the trip he had taken with Bulma and Gohan. His mind stuttered as he realized that Gohan had only been 5½ on that trip. Looking over at the children playing, he tried to imagine sending Goten out into space, the image wouldn't form. New Namek has only one sun instead of 3 Krillin. Dende offered. The night lasts for about 8 Earth hours this time of year. The children need to sleep. Please bring them inside. Mr. Popo's voice seemed to drift to the group. Nodding, Chi-Chi, Bulma, and 18 rounded up the reluctant Chibis, and followed the genie into the palace. Krillin? Videl asked quietly. She was wringing her hands in apparent agitation. What is it, Videl? Krillin asked gently. Can. Well, would it? Videl gripped her hands tightly together, trying to still the action. Krillin reached out and placed his own hands over hers. Take a deep breath, it's okay. Nodding, she asked in a rush, can you go get my daddy? Of course he can, sweetie. 18 said, as she rejoined the group. Really? No one will mind? Videl asked hopefully. Living with Krillin, 18, and Marin had been a wonderful experience. Videl had chosen to see her father a few times in the last couple of weeks. She had been happy to notice that the quality of their time together had felt different. He had actually listened to her. She was not sure she wanted to move back in with him, but she knew she still wanted him in her life. Well, I cannot promise that, Krillin said smiling, but I can and will go get him. Waving a quick farewell, he ran to the edge of the lookout and dove off. He returned about 30 minutes later with a very nervous Satan. Videl ran to them and hugged Krillin, thanking him. Taking her father's hand, she pulled him to the opposite end of the lookout to fill him in. Krillin rejoined the group. Everyone was congregated around the ball, staring at the still figures reflected in its depths. Mr. Popo had brought out food and Bulma was trying to get Chi-Chi to eat. Slowly, Videl and her father approached the Z warriors. Chi-Chi looked up the uncertain teen and smiled. Sit down, Videl. No one is going to kill your father right now. Hercule paled a bit as everyone else chuckled. Krillin, what were you talking about earlier? You know about going to Namek. How did you end up on a different planet? Videl asked as she reached for a bowl of noodles. Krillin leaned back and smiled. That is a long story. It all started at this reunion. For the next several hours, everyone took turns telling the story of how Raditz had come to the Earth to find Goku, Piccolo taking Gohan into the wild, the fight with the Saiyans, and the flight to Namek. Videl sat wide-eyed, soaking in the story. Vegeta was surprised listening to Gohan's history. He had always assumed that Kakabrat had something similar to a traditional Saiyan upbringing. Each child was tested at birth and eased into training as soon as walking was achieved. He had not realized the boy had been completely untrained only a year before he had originally met him. He had to admit, however grudgingly, that he was proud of him. Half-breed or not, he was worthy of his Saiyan ancestry. You should have seen those clowns. They kept prancing around and striking these ludicrous poses that always ended with them shouting the Ginyu Force. Krillin said laughing. But man, were they tough. This big guy, Rikum, came out and mopped the floor with us. Vegeta and I were completely out of the fight. Then Gohan just laid into him. I swear it was one of the most amazing things I have ever seen. I mean, Gohan maybe came to this guy's knee and he actually managed to hold his own for a while. Well, until Rikum broke his neck, that is. You let my baby get his neck broken? Chi-Chi shouted, charging Krillin. Realizing his mistake, he ran out of her path, finally flying a few feet into the air. It's okay, Chi-Chi, it was only broken for a little while and then Goku came with a sensu. Really? He was fine. He said frantically. Chi-Chi glared at him and sat back down, thinking that she really needed to learn how to fly sometime. Landing on the opposite side of the group, Krillin continued the story. Leading up to everyone but Goku and Frieza being wished to Earth. Wait, so Gohan's dad stayed on a planet that was about to blow up? Was he nuts? Hercule asked. An uncomfortable silence spread through the group. Surprisingly, Vegeta was the one that broke it. Yes, you fool, he stayed as any true Saiyan would, and yes, he was nuts. Vegeta affirmed. The tension broke as everyone laughed quietly. So what happened next? I mean, you were all here and he was left behind. How did it end? Videl asked, on the proverbial edge of her seat. Krillin laughed and resumed the tale, leading up to Frieza's landing on Earth, though he skipped the part about a time-traveling Trunks. Some things just do not really make sense unless you live them. Wait, so you're telling me that Gohan has been fighting his entire life? Hercule asked, a strange expression on his face. I mean, all of that happened before Cell. So that means he was in at least 4 major battles by the time he was what, 7? 8, yes. Chi-Chi said proudly. Pausing, Hercule took a deep breath, and met Chi-Chi's eyes. I need to make it right, what I did with Cell. He realized that all he had ever managed to do was win one tournament and break some tiles. Listening to the kid's life had made him feel so petty and small in comparison. Every eye was on him and Videl was quietly crying, proud of him. Chi-Chi looked at him closely, trying to sense any deception in his demeanor. Satisfied, she smiled. We'll get to that later. As the night wore on, everyone eventually succumbed to sleep. Suddenly Dende woke them. Gohan and Piccolo were moving out. Gohan and Piccolo crept from their cave just as the sun was beginning to brighten the sky. Retracing their steps from the previous evening, they once again looked down upon the small village. There were 10 Nameks standing guard outside a large dwelling. The rest seemed to be inside 2 of the other houses. Stepping back from the ledge, the 2 warriors prepared for battle. Still inside of their sphere, Piccolo powered up about 3/4 of the way. It was his job to knock the villagers out before Mavoy could use them. Gohan also powered up, sliding easily into his ascended form. He would head straight to the main problem. They were taking King Kai's warning very seriously. If this guy was that powerful, they wanted to take him out quickly. Going all out straight from the start seemed the safest approach. Ready, they charged into the valley, dropping their shield mere inches from the guards. Piccolo instantly took out 2 of the guards and phased in behind 2 others before the others even hit the ground. Within seconds, the ground was littered with unconscious bodies. In less than half a minute, Piccolo had moved the guards out of the way. The force of a powerful explosion blew him to the ground. Jumping to his feet, he raced toward the houses. As he reached for the door on the first house, it suddenly burst open. The Nameks he had hoped to quietly subdue swarmed him. Twisting around, he fought to hit the proper pressure points without permanently injuring the possessed souls. After several moments, bodies once again surrounded him. Before he could move on to the next house, the Nameks came to him. Teaming up they tried to attack him. Their efforts were in vain. Within a total of 5 minutes, he had managed to accomplish his goal. All of the Nameks were out in what he hoped to be a safe distance from the fight. Taking to the air, he joined Gohan. As Piccolo took out the guards, Gohan charged the main building. He could feel Mavoy inside, and he was alone. Taking a familiar stance, he held his hands at hip level, charging a strong Kamehameha. Letting it go, he decimated the house in front of him, leaving only a deep gash in the ground. Hearing someone clapping, he looked up. Mavoy was slowly clapping his hands together, smirking. My, aren't you a rude one? His voice was irritatingly high-pitched, while the tone was mocking, sarcastic. Gohan found himself forcibly reminded of Frieza. Let the people of this planet go. Gohan demanded. Why should I? They belong to me. They belong to no one. I will not allow you to continue to possess them. And who are you that I should be so afraid? My name is Gohan, son of Goku. Goku. Goku, now why is that name familiar? Mavoy narrowed his brown eyes. Goku defeated Frieza on Namek. Oh yes, the Saiyan monkey. Frieza was ever so displeased. You'll find I am far more powerful than that lizard ever claimed to be. But, why waste a potential servant? As the words left his mouth, his third eye began to glow, emitting a red light. Deciding he had listened long enough, Gohan rushed him and delivered a strong punch to his diaphragm. The force of the blow slammed Mavoy into the ground. Growling, he rose and stared at Gohan. How did you do that? He demanded, angry enough that his voice cracked. It's easy. Here, I'll do it again. Increasing his speed, Gohan again charged Mavoy, intent on finishing the battle quickly. His fist met thin air. Looking over his shoulder, he saw his target several meters behind him. Gohan knew what the third wish was now. You wished for the instant transmission technique, didn't you? Mavoy's eyes narrowed in temper. What do you know of wishes? And why aren't you bowing before me? You were trying to make me bow. Not going to happen. Gohan's face hardened as he turned to face him. How dare you, a mere monkey, refuse to bow before me? I am destined to be the supreme ruler. I shall travel from planet to planet until everyone knows my name. Now, bow. he demanded. His third eye was again glowing. I bow before no one. Besides, what is with all of the incessant talking? Every single time I come against a new foe, talking. Do you go to a class for it? Annoying battle banter 101. Gohan asked, stalling. He could see that Piccolo almost had all of the Namex out of the way. With Mayvoy's unfortunate ability to transport himself, the fight could get ugly. Why, you ignorant little fool? How dare you? I am Lord Mayvoy, everyone will bow before my power. Wow, you must have failed the class, huh? Pity. Gohan smirked. Piccolo was done and on his way. Why is Gohan baiting him? Chi-Chi asked. She didn't recognize her son's behavior. Isn't it obvious, harpy woman? He's stalling, waiting for Green Bean. Vegeta stated arrogantly. He was pleased by Gohan's actions. Mayvoy had always been a pompous fool with an annoying habit of imitating Frieza, something he had apparently not grown out of. Piccolo flew up next to Gohan, already in stance. Mayvoy did not look happy to see him. Glaring at the Namek, his third eye glowed red. As one, Piccolo and Gohan straightened, crossed their arms, and smirked. Why won't you bow? Mayvoy screamed. Without a word, the two went on the offense. Charging up dual Masenko blasts, they attempted to catch Mayvoy between them. He transported out of the way at the last moment, reappearing behind them. Do you see what I see, Gohan? Yep. He tends to transport to the same location. You hit, I'll catch. Piccolo raced to him, throwing a powerful punch at his face. As expected, Mayvoy vanished. But through Gohan's eyes he was able to see the satisfying ki blast Gohan had waiting. It hit its target. Again and again they set him up. Mayvoy was a predictable fighter. However, their hits did not seem to be making any real impact. Suddenly the yellow fighter let out a scream of frustration. His power skyrocketed, putting Cell to shame. Turning on the Earthlings, he went on the offense. Finally able to actually engage their enemy, Piccolo and Gohan synchronized their attacks. Hitting and punching together, they worked Mayvoy over. You would have thought they were giving him a massage for all the good it did. Laughing at their efforts, Mayvoy said, "Wow, I almost felt that one." Angry, Gohan blasted his face, trying to make a dent in his power. Holding a hand to his face, Mayvoy cursed him. Gohan was happy to note that two of his eyes looked a bit scorched and were closed. Growling, Mayvoy charged Gohan. The blow knocked him through the air. Before he could recover, Mayvoy transported behind and hit him again. He locked Gohan into a vicious cycle that the half-breed was unable to break. Timing his attack carefully, Piccolo fired a special beam cannon, piercing Mayvoy's arm. Gohan flipped in midair, regaining control and equilibrium. Phasing in beside Piccolo, they readied themselves. Geez, this guy is insane. Gohan is in his ascended form and he is playing with him. Yamcha exclaimed. I don't understand. Gohan beat Cell. How is it possible for him to get knocked around like this? Hercule asked. No one answered, their attention on the ball. Mayvoy stared at his arm. It was oozing dark orange blood, his blood. Hissing through clenched teeth, he glared at his attackers. This isn't working, Piccolo. I know. His power is immense. We'll tire out long before he does. Remember, those robots, with Cooler. Gohan sent Piccolo his memory of the fight, the robots that no one could scratch. It had taken focusing everything into a single location to cause any damage. Concentrated attacks might work, but he needs to stay still. Sphere. Do it. Their conversation had taken place in the span of a single heartbeat. Together, they once again charged Mayvoy. As they did so, Gohan wove a key sphere, designed to trap Mayvoy into a confined space. It would hopefully make his transmission useless. Reaching him, Gohan flung the sphere outwards. The fight was now restricted to the boundaries of his own creation. Taking advantage of their proximity, they began to attack one more. Blasting, punching, and kicking, attempting to cause as much damage as possible. Mayvoy growled, transporting himself out of the way. Or at least he tried to. Instead he hit the side of the barrier and was forcibly pushed back into the center and straight into Gohan. Using Piccolo's favored special beam cannon, Gohan attempted to pierce Mayvoy's skull. He knew they needed to end this, as it was, the battle had already raged for hours. Mayvoy was much stronger than they were and he could feel his sensei's energy falling. The force of the beam was enough to knock Mayvoy's head to the side and leave a deep gouge, but that was all. Glaring at the Demi-Saiyan, Mayvoy punched him into the ground. The sphere stretched to accommodate Gohan's movements. Piccolo watched in horror as Mayvoy lifted his hand, his fingers glowing as a tremendous amount of energy was gathered. He was going to shoot Gohan. His Gohan. Moving quickly, Piccolo leapt into the blast's path. No Piccolo. The ray had pierced the right side of Piccolo's chest. Gasping for breath, he sank to the ground. Gohan rushed to his side. Piccolo, he called tentatively. His sensei didn't answer, the blow had knocked him unconscious. Gohan could feel his pain as his own, the constant thunder in his mind dimmed to a barely audible rumble. No Piccolo. Dende screamed, collapsing to his knees, tears streaming down his face. They were going to die. The moment Piccolo left this dimension, both of his dearest friends would die. Krillin knelt by the young man. It's okay, Dende. Gohan will finish that monster, and when the Dragon Balls recharge, he'll bring Piccolo back. No, you don't understand. Dende cried, grief-stricken. When Piccolo dies, so will Gohan. They will both be gone, and that thing will still control the Dragon Balls. A shocked silence filled the air. It just couldn't happen, could it? Mayboy laughed gleefully at the fallen figure before him. Well, that was fun. And now it's your turn. Charging up a similar ray, he prepared to shoot Gohan as well when a strong wave of energy pinned him against the barrier's wall. Gohan stood staring at Piccolo. He was not allowed to die. He was not allowed to leave him like that again. Screaming in rage, he reached for that endless well of power that came with his third form. Holding on to it, he forced the energy through himself, condensing it into every muscle, bone, and tendon. Folding it over and over again, arming himself but resisting the transformation. Mayboy watched in pure horror as the boy in front of him screamed endlessly. He could not move, the shockwaves of power were too strong. Gohan concentrated on the thunder in his mind, hanging on to that tangible piece of Piccolo. Suddenly his body jerked, unable to contain the power he had forced it to endure. In a final burst of light, Gohan's long hair lost its golden luster, bleaching into a glowing white. His eyes were no longer teal, but an eerily pale blue. As the thunder rumbled through his mind, Gohan became the lightning. The Z warriors watched Gohan in awe. They had never seen a transformation like that. It was so powerful that even Baba's ball was pulsing, a fine network of cracks snaking along its surface. Vegeta, what level is that? Tien asked. Vegeta shook his head. Whatever Kakabrat had done was beyond even the legends. Gohan rose into the air, toward Mayboy. His pale eyes a window into his rage. The monster in front of him flinched in response to that gaze. Charging up a blast, Mayboy attempted to hit whatever this new demon before him was. Growling, Gohan was suddenly behind him. Fisting both hands together, he slammed Mayboy into the ground. Immediately phasing in above him, he blasted him repeatedly, driving him further into the ground as orange blood began to run freely. Mayboy couldn't move, couldn't breathe. It wasn't fair, he was to be the new supreme ruler of the universe. Pushing his rage into a ball of energy, he shoved it at Gohan. He was only able to push the furious boy away by a few inches. Snarling, Gohan picked Mayboy up, holding him by the tatters of his armor. Swiftly throwing him against the side of sphere, Gohan held one hand up by his head and one by his hip. Ma Senko, Kamehameha. Gohan forced the two attacks to merge. The mixture of energy became a vibrant cobalt beam. Trapped in place, Mayboy watched in dismay as the blast approached him. He raised his hands attempting to block, but it was too powerful. Unable to even scream, only the swirling ash served to mark his passing. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story and want more, be sure to like and subscribe. Next episode will be out soon.